Tom Thomas back with you. Today we're going to take a break from the analysis of fly tying materials and talk about refurbishing our fly boxes. Most of my fly boxes are almost 10 years old, so they've had a few things happen to them. There are probably about 3 different kinds of fly boxes. There's the slotted foam. These are probably going to be the most difficult to do it yourself and replace. I'll show you more details on it, but this one here, the foam is dried out on this one and it's got cracks in it. The other kind of boxes are made with ripple foam, and these are a softer closed cell foam, and they tend to tear with the barbs and everything as you take the flies in and out. Here's just another example. This is my San Juan River fly box where I have all my tiny flies, and it's beginning to show its wear as well. But I love this box, and it has everything I need it when I fish the San Juan River. And then you have the do-it-yourself, which most of us will do a little wood box. I had cork in here and it kind of flaked out, so I want to replace something with that. Now, one of the first things you want to consider is cost. It can be a little bit expensive replacing the foam, and sometimes maybe even worth more than the fly box is worth. Just go buy a new one. So these here, this is a 4x7 and it runs around $20 to $25. So if you can replace one of these for $5, you're probably doing really good. One of these, the ripple foams, they were having a closeout on these. I think I spent $2 a piece for these and I got like 10 of them. So just use another box I have in stock rather than replace the stuff is probably more economical. And these run around $4 or $5 anyway, so they're pretty inexpensive. This one, I do want to spend the money to replace it. So the options we have are sheets of foam, and then you can cut out your pattern based on what it takes to replace the foam in your box. These are about $1 a piece, so pretty economical way to go, but it can be very time consuming cutting these. The ripple foam is fairly expensive. You can get a sheet like this. I believe this is 15 by 17. It runs around $20. So you want to use this wisely because it can add up pretty quick on being worth more than what your fly box is worth. So those are the 2 considerations for foam material. And then there's the cork, if you want to stick with cork for your do-it-yourself box, or you want to slice it up and use it on your boxes that have foam in them now. So those 2 considerations are cost and time, and cutting and I already used the solvent on this one, but cutting this pattern here can be really time consuming, and especially if you want a really nice professional look. Now, some of the things you're going to need, you got to remove the foam from the box, obviously. 2 good solvents to use is nail polish remover, which is acetone. Not too expensive. I think you can get a bottle of this for $1.50. Surprisingly, WD-40, you can squirt it up under there and peel them loose. That works real well. And then if it's an epoxy-based type thing, then isopropyl alcohol. So we'll get started. I'll show you what the failures of some of my existing boxes are, the condition they're in, and then we'll go through a process of removing the foam from the existing boxes, and then we'll cut out the material for those boxes and see how everything goes. This particular fly box, the foam dried out, and as you can see on the slots, they separated, and those need to be replaced, this whole piece. This one had a similar problem, is that the foam dried out, but it fanned out, and so those slots are no longer usable for small flies. Probably the least expensive fly boxes out there are the ones that use the ripple foam. And as you can see on this one, the ripple foam has been torn apart and needs to be replaced. Most likely a lot of our problems are with use. We put our flies in there and keep them in a while, and then this foam has a memory and those slots are no longer usable, especially for small flies. If you're like me and you're a do-it-yourselfer and you've made a few fly boxes your own, I used cork initially and my cork fell apart over the years, so I want to replace that with some ripple foam. So I'm outside and I've been working on this, and the foam with the slots has come off pretty good. Once you got one edge started, you could peel it up if you got stuck, a little bit of acetone underneath, and it came up, and most of the glue did. There is some residual glue that I had to continue to scrub with some acetone, and I still got some work to do left on that. Now on the, I'll turn my camera this way, on the ribbed foam, that just peeled up by the edge, and the rib foam was strong enough to just stay together and peeled it off, and most of the adhesive stayed on the rib foam. The piece of flat foam on the other side, that's a different story. It just fell apart on me. The acetone didn't really seem to work very well. It just kept falling apart. I added a single edge razor blade to my tools on working on it. So I've got more work to do with the flat foam. That just fell apart on me. After about 15 minutes and giving this thing a bath in acetone, I've got a lot of it, but there's still a residual I got to work on. I gotta say, the side that the ripple foam was on just pulled off without any residual at all, but the flat, it was very thin and it just came out in chunks. For cutting out the foam, you'll need these tools. Some are pretty obvious. You'll want a small hobby knife or an X-Acto knife. This is a DeWalt that has the break-off blades. It's a good tool to use. And then surprisingly, you want some 150 grit sandpaper. That'll help smooth the edges that you cut and make it look a little more professional. Now, cutting out the slotted foam, you want to use this as a template in addition to having a straight edge across there, because these will deform on you as you draw your lines. I used a ballpoint pen. Another thing is, if you want all your marks and everything to be underneath where the adhesive will go, you want to have your template upside down and trace that out and cut that. So this will take a lot of patience on properly getting it outlined and cut. And you'll want to make sure while you cut it, you hold your knife completely in a perpendicular position to the foam. Otherwise, it'll actually look like crap because the foam will be at an angle when you look at it. So this will take you a lot of time, so just be patient to do it. For the ripple foam, it's pretty straightforward. There isn't any slots or anything we have to do. This foam that I have that was in my boxes is a lot inferior to the new ripple foam that I bought. So the newer stuff is a much thicker, harder foam, and hopefully will perform better than the softer foam that I took out of my boxes. Using the foam as a guide, I outlined my outside edge. I noticed that my foam was separated by 3/8 inch gaps by a solid 1/2 inch foam. So as I went through it, I did marks and did 3/8 half, 3/8 half. Then I took a straight edge to go between there on each side. Now, looking over here, always use the top edge as your datum point, and always measure from there. Otherwise, you're going to have creeping errors in your measurements. So like you will do 3/8, and then you will do 7/8, and then you will do 10/8, and then on down till you get to the end. That way you will not get things skewed as the further you go down. So I'm going to cut this out. I did decide on just doing square edges. I thought that was going to be a lot easier than having one edge rounded. For some finishing touches, you want to get a couple tweezers, a flat and a pointed, and just pull off a lot of the frayed ends. I may have missed one there. Also, I had a small knife blade, an X-Acto knife, and again to trim off just some of the small little edges, a very sharp single edge razor blade, and then kind of to smooth some of my rough spots, I had a 500 grit sandpaper. You got to lightly use sandpaper because it'll scuff it. But like I tell my kids, you know, once you think it's good, you can screw with it and screw with it till you screw it up. So I think we're ready to put in the slits. We're going to zoom in right here. The slits are 1/8 inch apart, and gosh, I'm stalling here. I wasn't ready for that measurement. And they're 3/8 inch long. Got the slits in the foam, and I wanted to show you that you want to do your slits cut from the bottom, because as you cut them, you can see there's indentations and almost a little pilot hole there. But if you flip it over, you can't even see the slits. So it covers up a lot of sins by doing it that way. You can see I started out cutting it on this side, and I said, wait a minute, I should do it on the other side. For our final step, it's time to spray the adhesive on the back if you have the spray. I had this already around, and I'm sure there's other out there that are just as good, and there's probably some you can roll on or paint on. Now for the fun part, I'm going to spray this guy, the back side. This one by far was the most difficult, the most cutting, and 150 slits. It turned out really well. It looks pretty good. I do like the white. I originally thought I'd like the blue better. But what's nice about the white is you can clearly see what's inside your box. One thing I wish I could have done is get just a little bit firmer foam, but we'll see how this holds up. The fly is definitely stay in there anywhere from the small ones to the larger nymphs. For my green box that has the ripple foam, you can set the edge down onto the back side of the foam. Make sure you're orienting the ribs the way you want them to go. I'm going to press down, and then I'll just be cutting just barely inside that line. And you can see the indentation, a couple of alignment marks from the box, and I'm going to cut that out. It looks pretty symmetrical, so I can just flip it over and put it in. The adhesive's on the back. The adhesive is on the back side here. The ripple foam turned out real well. I ended up doing a flat side for my streamers and stuff, and then the more dense ripple foam there, that turned out real well. And then last, I decided to go back to cork for my box, just have it be all natural materials. I put a flat cork on here, and then what I did on these, instead of the narrow 1/8 strip, I made these a little bit more than a 1/2 inch, so those will hold up better as well. And it actually goes on top, and this one closes up. And this one closes up. And that concludes our refurbishing the fly boxes. So I guess in conclusion, we'll talk about the final cost of these things. So this one, being the most difficult, but used the least expensive foam, probably maybe $4 by the time you include all the razor blades and the adhesive and X-Acto knife blades. The cork one I did pretty much kind of a freebie. I had the cork on hand. It's pretty inexpensive anyway. The ripple foam, this guy probably has $4 worth of ripple foam in there, if that, plus the adhesive's already with it. This foam, or the flat foam on that side, is pretty cheap. So, you know, a razor blade or so, or a X-Acto knife blade or so. So, you know, $4 or $5, which is probably what the thing's worth anyway. But it has some really nice ripple foam in it now. So thanks for watching, and have fun doing your boxes.